What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Play by Play podcast. This is going to be episode number 68, where today we are hopping straight back into the NFL mock drafts. Doing a mock draft today that is going to be over prioritizing the quarterback position. More specifically, we're going to have 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first round in this mock draft to see how it will affect other teams. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment and like down below, and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, what are you doing, man? Go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below. And like always, you already know there's going to be a bar popping up right here. And without further ado, guys, the commentary on the 2025 NFL Draft starts right now. Let's go. So a couple of things before we get into this. Number one, you guys have been absolutely loving these mock draft episodes. The past 2 that I've had have been 2 of the most viewed episodes on this channel, and I'm super glad because I love doing them as well. I absolutely love the NFL and the NBA draft, as well as we're going to be getting into forward in the next couple of months with the NBA draft. But I felt that this episode was definitely much needed, just seeing as I think that the landscape has now really changed, especially at the top of the order of the draft, with Russell Wilson now signing to the New York Giants. I've seen a couple people say that they don't believe that this is really going to matter when it comes to the Giants' drafting ability, to the Giants' drafting needs. But I definitely think that it's going to be a big thing, especially pertaining to these top 2 picks right here with the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. To me, if New York wasn't super confident that they were going to be able to get either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders at 3, I don't think that they would have signed Russell Wilson. I think if they believed that they were able to get one of those 2 guys at the number 3 overall pick, that they wouldn't have gone out and signed Russell, because these are 2 guys, especially with your draft in the top 3, that are going to be starting day 1 for your franchise, that you want out on the field for day 1 and going ahead. Now, that's not to say that New York can't go out at the number 3 overall pick, although I think that's highly unlikely, or more likely back in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round, and draft other guys such as, a Kyle McCord has been getting a lot of attention, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, we talked about a lot on this channel. That could definitely be a prospect there as well, and having developed behind a guy like Russell Wilson, who I think is a solid veteran that you want there to kind of mold the young minds behind him. I definitely think that that's a possibility, but I really do feel that with this Russell Wilson move, it means that quarterback is going to be a huge prioritization to these top 2 teams. And we've seen it. Tennessee has kind of stowed away a little bit from Abdul Carter in the past couple of weeks, going more towards Cam Ward, seeing a lot more of his workouts, speaking to him a lot more. And Cleveland as well. They were in the running for Russell Wilson. They didn't go ahead and get him. It does not seem that they are really wanting to go another year with Deshaun Watson at the helm. With them letting go Jameis Winston to the New York Giants, I don't really see a world where they potentially don't go quarterback in this first round. And I know that that's crazy to say with the talents like Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, and anything is still possible. This does not mean that this is going to happen, but we do know how much of a universal position quarterback is. There are always teams that are going to need it, and because of those big time needs, there are always teams that are going to be wanting to reach out and get them, even if it means that they are maybe drafting too low of a talent at too high of a pick. So let me stop talking. Let me shut up for a little bit, and let's go ahead and let's get into this. Like I said, this is going to be a mock draft where 3 quarterbacks are going to go within this first round. I'm going to be pointing out some teams throughout this draft that I think could aim to grab that 3rd quarterback. But the first one going off the board, obviously, is going to be Cam Ward with this number 1 overall pick to the Tennessee Titans. I think that as we continue to get closer and closer, this is becoming more and more of a lock again. They've been talking to him a lot more. They've been going to a lot more of his workouts. I know that a lot of analysts really do love his ceiling a lot higher than Shedeur Sanders. Sanders might be the better guy coming in on day 1, might be making better decision making, but with Cam Ward, with his arm strength ability, with his playmaking ability, kind of similar to what we saw from Aaron Rodgers earlier on in his career in Green Bay, just the ability to roll out of the pocket and turn dead plays into positive plays. I think that Cam Ward is definitely going to be the number 1 overall pick here. And Brian Callahan, especially as a second year head coach, not having this guy in year one, it is clear that him and Will Levis just did not have a great relationship, great chemistry. There were call outs at certain press conferences. Brian Callahan looks to want his guy, and I think that Cam Ward is definitely that guy for them. Moving on to number two, going to go by quickly with these two because kind of already set in stone what it's going to be. That's going to be Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado at the number 2 overall pick for the Cleveland Browns. Definitely a team that, could potentially need someone like Sanders being ready right away with some of the other weapons that they have. I think that they definitely have a couple more weapons than the Tennessee Titans do at times at offense with guys such as Jerry Jeudy, with David Njoku, with the possibility of them potentially going out and getting a running back in the second or third round because we know how deep this running back class is. Shedeur is crazy accurate. He has really, really great decision making. Sure, there are some flaws. Dropped back a little bit too far. Both quarterbacks seem to have an issue of holding on to the ball for a little bit too long. But if I were to count on who is going to be the better quarterback day one, it would be Shedeur Sanders. He seems just like the much more polished prospect. He might not have the hyper athleticism that Cam Ward does, but he is definitely somebody that's going to be a very solid pocket passer for you and is going to be able to navigate, especially for a team like the Cleveland Browns who, it's kind of up and down when it comes to their offensive line. So now we get to the important piece, and this is one of the teams that, like I mentioned, could definitely look at potentially going quarterback. And you look at some of the rankings that we have here: Jalen Milroe, Will Howard, Riley Leonard, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Cal McCord. These are all guys that I wouldn't doubt could potentially go in this first round, especially guys like McCord, Dart, and Milroe, who've been getting a lot of attention over the past couple of weeks. But for the New York Giants, they have Jameis Winston, they have Russell Wilson. I don't really see them going with a quarterback that is going to be a third string within the first round. And we've talked about it so much throughout the past couple of weeks with the desperation that Brian Daboll and Jim Shohan are having at this moment with trying to cling on to their jobs. I think that they are really going to go out and just try to get the best player available, the generational type talent in this draft, and try to get a guy that can just boost their win totals as much as you can. I love Abdul Carter off the edge. I love his athleticism. I love his versatility. I love his ability to stop the run. But I think that when you have a guy like Travis Hunter being able to play both wide receiver and cornerback, the type of speed offense that this team could have with Travis Hunter and Malik Nabers on opposite ends of the field, with him being able to plug in at the number one cornerback role, with him being just a bona fide leader. This is a dude that could step in day one and just be a big-time leader in this defense, along with still talented players like Dalvin Tomlinson and Brian Burns. I think that this is the guy that is going to be able to make the most impact for Daboll day one. He's going to be able to utilize him in so many different packages. He could put him in a slot for the receiver. He could put him on streak routes. You could put him on drag routes. You get him on the easy slant. You could put him anywhere, and he's going to be able to succeed and make your team a lot better. Which leaves the New England Patriots. And I've seen a lot of this scenario where the New England Patriots also end up going out and getting Abdul Carter, or if the Giants end up going edge with Carter, they end up getting Travis Hunter. And I understand that as far as a talent side, I do get that. But especially if Carter is available at number 4, I just feel like a lot of the additions that the Patriots had this free agency is going to outweigh Carter's ability. I understand how big of a talent he has, but getting guys such as Robert Spillane, getting guys like Carlton Davis in the secondary, the big-time moves that Vrabel made in this defensive end, I think that it is really clear that they are going to try and get Drake May as much help as they can on the offensive line. They just got him a number 1 wide receiver with Stephon Diggs, and now you go ahead and get him a franchise tackle in Will Campbell, somebody who, in my opinion, is the most talented tackle in the draft. I know that there have been concerns with his shorter arms. I know that there have been concerns with some of his athletic ability, being able to get down in a stance on the outside of that offensive line. But honestly, when you really look at a lot of the measurements of a lot of the tackles, a lot of them have shorter arms. Membu has shorter arms. He's kind of that stereotypical tackle to guard type of translation. It's just kind of how these tackles have came out this year. And I think that Campbell just outshines the rest with his ability to march forward, especially on the run, and just use so much power. I think that that's really going to be big time, especially if New England is looking to increase the amount of run game that they use within the season to try and make the passing game more unpredictable. Because we mentioned this so many times on the channel, when your run game is doing great, the offense ends up doing great because your offense is more unpredictable. So I think that Campbell here, again, has a lot of versatility ability, could slide into the inside at guard, which could allow the Patriots to put out their best 5 offensive linemen out on the field. I think that this is the best spot for them, which leaves the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5, another team that is kind of flirting here with Abdul Carter a little bit. I've also looked at Mason Graham on the interior, but I think if Carter falls at number 5, I understand that I've had him falling at certain times to number 8 to Carolina. But honestly, if this type of talent falls to number 5 with some of the people that the Jags have, did not mean to do that, have on their defensive side, being able to put them on the other side of Foyesay Oluokun with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines on the outside end. You still have Eric Armstead in the middle. So you still do have a really solid trench when it comes to your pass rush and just getting more athletic ability on the outside. I mean, having the speed between Abdul Carter and Devin Lloyd, that is something that is going to be very, very, very deadly. And for Jacksonville, I'd also like to potentially see them look out into the secondary a little bit, maybe for somebody like a Will Johnson potentially. But it seems like his draft stock is starting to lower a little bit. Jahdae Barron out of Texas, he's more of your stereotypical slot corner guy with the size that he has. So I don't think that they would really go into that direction. I think that right here, Abdul Carter makes the most sense. Best available player and somebody that could still help you in those trenches with the pass rush. Las Vegas Raiders at number 6, and I think that this pick has been becoming more and more common in mock drafts. And to be honest, it just makes a ton of sense. It's just the best fit for the Raiders right now, and that is Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. What a better way to start Pete Carroll's era in Seattle, in Las Vegas, I apologize, than getting him a guy that could potentially be a Marshawn Lynch type of player for him. With the ability that Jeanty has, with his amazing balance, with his ability to break through, the first 2 or 3 tackles and break off for runs. This is a guy that could kind of replicate Lynch. He doesn't have the exact same power that he does, but is definitely somebody with the great balance, with the ability to break tackles that he does, that could plug into that role. It would make this offense so dynamic, especially now having Geno Smith, a suitable veteran quarterback at the helm, relying on those two. Now having Jeanty in the backfield, it would make this offense so much dynamic. It is a major need for the Raiders as of right now. I think in the backfield they have, I'm going to take a look right now with you guys, with me. I think they have Alexander Mattison still at that. They did sign Raheem Morstead, but outside of that, how great is that really going to be? Zamir White, who is dealing with a little bit of injury, Raheem Mostert, definitely getting older up there. But with some of the additions that they have made at offensive line throughout the past couple of years, especially Jackson Power-Johnson in the middle at that center position, Jacoby Myers still a solid number 1 receiver. Maybe not your stereotypical number 1 receiver option, but definitely somebody that could get you some yards there. And now you add in the running game with Ashton Jeanty. You add in some power into this offense. I think that Pete Carroll is going to be wanting that, and I think that Jeanty will do solid there. Another team that could potentially go for quarterback, I'm not going to draft a quarterback with them, but that is the New York Jets at number 7. And the reason being why I'm not going to look out and draft a quarterback here, at least in the first round for New York, is because obviously they got Justin Fields. And I think that Aaron Glenn and his coaching staff are really going to want to see how this really works out for Justin Fields in New York, seeing if they can raise that ceiling from years before. Now, when you take a look at other mock drafts, this is Charles Davis's 2025 NFL mock draft. He has Tyler Warren going there at tight end for the New York Jets, and that's definitely a possibility with the big hole that the Jets continue to have there. Here they have Armand Membu going for CBS's mock draft, which I take a look at a lot. Will Campbell, Tedero McMillan. So definitely potential for a wide receiver, especially with losing Davante Adams. You still have Garrett Wilson in that area, so it's not a major need. Where are my New York Jets? Right here. Take a look at their depth chart a little bit. So you still have Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard is suitable. There definitely is a huge hole at that tight end position. But for me, you need Fields to be as protected as possible. You don't want him running for his life. And with having Olu Shafanu coming back from injury, I think that they're going to go out and get Armand Membu. You get your 2 franchise tackles on the outside. We saw a team and the Los Angeles Chargers this previous year, who were very, very limited when it came to offensive weapons. But they did such a really great job being able to protect Justin Herbert. They did such a great job being able to protect the running back going forward in the running game, and it made their offense very successful despite not having a lot of big-time offensive weapons. And now you have a dynamic quarterback in Justin Fields, who is a dual threat. You have Garrett Wilson, who is a suitable number one wide receiver. He has proven that. And now you get your franchise tackle on either side. M'Bendu has great athleticism, definitely a guy that I could see also sliding inside. But the athleticism between M'Bendu and Fashanu, I mean, there's real upside there, especially on a lot of short passes, maybe some screen passes with the running back, getting these two bigger guys out in front of the backfield, in front of the running back, and blocking for him going forward. Definitely a big time fit there for our man M'Bendu. Then we go to the Carolina Panthers, which I think is kind of a flex pick here for them. I think that they could kind of go anywhere with this. Edge and linebacker are definitely two of the biggest needs for them. I've had, like I've mentioned before, I've had Abdul Carter fall into them in past drafts. I've also looked at Jalen Walker potentially. Receiver is obviously a big time need for them. Running back could be a need. You look into the defense. I mean, you have Derrick Brown on the defensive end. You have solid people in the secondary, such as J.C. Horn. It's tough. It's tough. And it is tough, especially when it comes to the receivers, because I feel like if Tetairoa McMillan does not go to Carolina, if he doesn't go to Jacksonville, if he doesn't go to LA, I think that he's really going to fall in this draft. If we take a look at some of what CBS has, Chris Trapasso has Jalen Walker. I just like that pick just simply based off of his versatility. Much more of a box linebacker, can do great in run support. They have Jalen Walker as well. Mykel Williams, Tetairoa McMillan. I just like this Jalen Walker pick a lot. Again, somebody who is just very athletic. I've also liked Jahad Campbell with his ability to play in the pass coverage backing up. It's always tough, guys. It's always tough, especially when you get two picks like this. But I'm going to go out. I'm going to make the pick that I believe in, the guy that I like the most, and that's Jalen Walker from Georgia. Some people may be a little bit of a reach. I know if you do not pick him past this point that he falls into the mid to late 20s, really. But I do think that with his ability to play as a box linebacker, I understand that he's a little bit undersized, but he could play on that weak side, be in run support, use his finesse to get around tackles. If you take a look at the linebacking core, putting him aside Josie Jewell, who's really a stuffer in the middle, you have an older veteran in there that could potentially develop him with Jadeveon Clowney. Of course, there are questions of can he translate potentially to a defensive end. I'm not really sure about that just because of his smaller size, but with his athletic ability, with his ability to drop back in coverage, he has great tackling, solid in run support. I think that this is really a guy that Carolina can really count on from day one to plug in there. Then you have the New Orleans Saints. Again, another flex, another wild card pick for me because they could kind of go all over the place. Pro Football Focus has running back and wide receiver as a big time need. To me, that is not really what I'm really looking at for them, obviously. And I understand that they've been dealing with a lot of injury at those two positions. I feel like New Orleans. I mean, it's tough because you do have an offensive-minded coach in Kellen Moore. Let's take a look at New Orleans Saints. Will Campbell here, Jalen Walker, Will Campbell. Who else do we got? Tetairoa McMillan. I just don't think that Tetairoa is really in need despite the injuries that these two have been going for. This is a potential Shedeur Sanders landing spot. This is also another potential quarterback spot with the New Orleans Saints. I just think that it's too much of a risk right now to take one of these potential second, third round guys in the first round. You don't want to be in a position where you're taking a Kenny Pickett with a Kenny Pickett type player with the 9th overall pick. And of course, they still have Spencer Rattler behind there, so they're not really in too much of a need. Corner is definitely could be a position that they could go to, but Jahdae Barron is just so small. I'm not sure if he could really fit in there with that group just as a pure slot corner. The inside, got guys like Carl Granderson, who had 5.5 sacks last year. The thing with this Saints team, especially defensively, is you just need a guy who's going to bring a real pop. You need somebody that is going to give you something just some type of energy, really, because it didn't really seem, especially when things started going downhill after their first 2 wins in the draft. I'm going to go Mason Graham on that interior. Cam Jordan is definitely getting to the end of his career, the tail end of his career. I think that this is a good guy to really put next to him. This is a guy that is a beast in the middle, could play on the defensive end of the side, can play the nose tackle as well. Definitely a guy that is also very versatile athletically, as are so many of these great pass rushers. This is really a very, very deep pass rushing class. Mason Graham's going to fill in there, and I think that he's a guy that could finally get things rolling for this pass rush, give this defense a pop, and allow younger guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry to not have to cover so long within that. I've also flirted with Jihad Campbell at that number 9 overall pick just because of his zone ability as a linebacker. He has so much ability with his pass coverage ability and being able to be into run support. But I think that Mason Graham, especially at 9 overall right now, that's just a little bit too low down in the draft for him to fall for me. So I don't think that the Saints could really pass down an opportunity like that. Then you have the Chicago Bears, somebody that everyone has been flirting with to go in offensive line, but then they obviously filled out the offensive line need within this. I think that this is also a team that could potentially go for another pass rusher. I've also liked cornerback for them. I think that you need to get somebody across from Jalen Johnson who's not going to be getting hurt all the time. Brisker was hurt a lot this season. Johnson got hurt at times, and they just didn't really have anybody next to him that could really do it. I know that a lot of people are really prioritizing Jahdae Barrett, and I understand that. And I understand that a lot of people might see this as a reach, but I'm going to give them Will Johnson. I feel like that this is the guy that is just much better suited. We go the Wolverines back-to-back, by the way. This is a guy that is much better suited to play on the outside in that number 2 corner role across from Jalen Johnson with his size, with his ability to play in press man coverage. Even in zone, he shows great IQ to be able to push his man to the inside towards the defense and allow him to cut off those routes. He is very aggressive. He does tend to gamble a little bit, which could be a little bit of a negative at times. But you have Will Johnson, Kevin Beard, if Brisker can stay healthy, and Jalen Johnson, man, that is one heck of a secondary, and you add that into the fact that they just built the offense the way that they do. They got guys within the trenches like Grady Jarrett in the middle of that defensive line to go ahead and play in those trenches. Montez Sweat on the left side, Tremaine Edmonds in the middle. That is a solid defense, and the Chicago Bears, if they make a selection like this, are now looking like potentially one of the most talented young teams within the NFL as of right now. Let's go ahead and move to the San Francisco 49ers at 11. Another team that could definitely go edge, as you see James Pierce here for a lot of these analysts. Mykel Williams, who a lot of people have liked. Mike Green also, who also has some pass coveraging ability. You also would like to potentially see them go tackle potentially, especially with Trent Williams aging. They did lose Talanoa Hufanga to the Denver Broncos, so potentially safety, linebacker to replace Dre Greenlaw. And this is really another flex pick where they could kind of go everywhere. They also did lose Deebo Samuel, obviously, but I think that they have enough depth at wide receiver there. I'm not going to give them Jihad Campbell just because I feel like they still have guys at linebacker that are suitable. They still have guys like Frank Warren. They still have Fred Warner, Frank Warren. Wow, Fred Warner. Behind that, they actually don't have a lot. This defense definitely took a big time hit out of free agency. You know what? I'm going to go with something I've never done before, which I think is going to be a trend with this draft. I'm going to go Malachi Starks. And the reason being is because not only is he by far the best safety in the class, and he plays really well as that box strong safety, big heavy hitter to knock the ball out, but he's also somebody with his zone coverage abilities and his size to be able to be a number 1 cornerback as well. And so I think that with that versatility, with the state that this defense is right now, you need athletes, right? You need a guy that's just going to be able to fly around everywhere. And I think that Starks, he could play safety. He could potentially play box linebacker. He could potentially go on the outside and play corner. He is a guy that could be rotated everywhere. And I think that right now, that is just what is best suited, because once again, this Niners defense just needs a big time pop. Losing Charvarius Ward, Hufanga, Greenlaw, you need to really start building this defense back up. The pass rush, there are still some solid pass rush options there. But honestly, it's such a deep pass rushing class that you could definitely go out and get somebody like this in the second round. Like, I would not doubt if a Shamar Stewart, if a Nick Scorton, potentially even a Dominic Izuruku or Michael Williams fall into the second round. If you take a look at interior defensive end, I'm sorry, I'm going to take edge off here so that we can see this. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you could get a Derek Harmon, Darius Alexander, maybe even a Kenneth Grant, if there are other players that are prioritized throughout this draft. So this is definitely a deep pass rush class, and so I don't think that should be a priority for San Francisco right away, because that is definitely a need that they could fill out later in the draft. Now, the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, this was the stereotypical Ashton Jeanty pick a couple of weeks ago. Now, with Jeanty being gone at 6 and going higher, they're obviously going to have to look in different directions. A lot of people have them going Tedero McMillan, trying to add more to their offensive attack with Dak Prescott, especially now that the running game is definitely going to suffer a lot more with Javonte Williams being in that backfield. And yeah, I could definitely see that, but I think that with Zach Martin being out, I feel like you have to attack this offensive line almost. Ooh. You could also go with athletic ability with Matthew Golden later on in the draft, but I think that's just a little bit too high for him. Jahad Campbell at linebacker, Luther Burden. You know what? At 12, we're going to go best player available, Tedero McMillan. Big-time deep threats, definitely a red zone threat for sure as well, as somebody that with his size, with his jumping ability, his aggressive playmaking in the receiving game, could go up and jump and get balls on fades, on streak routes. You put him across from CeeDee Lamb, this is going to be a really great pass attack. And again, I'm going to keep reiterating this. This running back class is so freaking deep that you could still get a really solid young running back later in the draft. Quinshawn Junkins, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal. I mean, these are all guys. Devin Neal is projected to go, the third, fourth round, and he is definitely a guy that could be a day one starting running back in my eyes. So, if you're a Cowboys fan and you're looking for offensive line, you're looking for running back, you could still look for those areas later on in the draft. And this way you have the possibility of getting a Tedero McMillan, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and you go out and you maybe get like a Devin Neal in the fourth round. That is an explosive offense. And I understand that there is need for offensive line as well, especially on that interior. But the interior of the draft is not really that deep. And the offensive tackles, I just don't think that this is the right value right now. So the Cowboys could actually definitely be somebody that you could potentially look at to trade back. That being said, I'm going to go back on everything that I just said, because I am going to be going offensive tackle for the Miami Dolphins. I've done it almost every single time that I've drafted for them, because I just think that the health of Tua Tagovailoa has to be the number one priority for them. And with the fact that they took a developmental player a couple of years, a developmental tackle in Austin Jackson, and he has not really worked out, you need to get a guy that is going to be solid there. Kelvin Banks probably has some of the best size out of all the tackles in this draft. An absolute mammoth, great with power, is another guy that could plug in right away. Is a guy that was flirting with being, top 5, top 10 a couple of weeks ago. So 13 pick value, the health of Tua Tagovailoa has to be your top priority. And I think that Kelvin Banks accomplishes that. Indianapolis Colts, Tyler Warren. I don't really see a position where Tyler Warren does not go to the Colts in this. Could the Colts potentially flirt with quarterback? Yes, but I think that Shane Steichen is going to give Anthony Richardson just one more year. They got Daniel Jones as an insurance. I understand that that's not a lot, but this way with Warren, you get Richardson and Jones more weapons. You plug in what is your biggest hole at the tight end position. Give him with some solid athleticism, especially going down the field, the ability to potentially block. This is the right pick for Indy to potentially elevate their offense. The Atlanta Falcons in 15, I've also talked about this a lot. I don't see a world where they don't go defense, because they need defense so bad. So definitely going with this pass rush, especially with them struggling so much in the tackling game. So I think that this is somewhere where Jahad Campbell could go into play at linebacker. Again, like I spoke, somebody who is solid in run support, can do great in tackling, but can also do great in coverage. And so that's somebody that just kind of covers all those needs for Atlanta and goes back and can do that. So I think that that's a solid pick there. Arizona Cardinals, another team that is a little bit of a flex pick, could kind of go everywhere. You'd like to see them improve the offensive line, especially on the interior. But as we've talked about so much, the interior offensive line depth in this draft just isn't really there. Chris Trapasso actually has them reaching a little bit for Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. Jalen Walker a little bit, Jahad Campbell, Kenneth Grant. I mean, I could definitely see a spot for potentially a pass rusher, Jalen Walker, Mike Green, zone edge. I like offensive line for them. There is also Pro Football Focus has them needing corner. But I think they have Sean Murphy-Bunting, Starling Thomas. Is this a spot where Jahdae Barron could potentially go? Linebacking core definitely needs some work as well. Outside of Baron Browning, likely they have Dalvin Tomlinson in that middle. I mean, it's just like you want to go offensive line for them, but just the depth is not there. So I think at 16, you could get somebody across from Murphy Bunting. So we're going to go with Jahdae Barron, another guy that is just super, super athletic, a lot of speed on his side, which works to his benefit because, again, he lacks in a lot of size. Is not somebody that I think could be a stereotypical number 2 overall corner, but if they could potentially play him at that position for this year and then going forward, potentially sign other cornerbacks that could play that position and then get him on the inside, definitely think that that's where he could work. Oh, excuse me. And so now the Cincinnati Bengals come into the play, and this is a team that I think is now frowning because I think that they really would have wanted Jahdae Barron. I think that secondary definitely needs some rejuvenation, some pop. But I think that this is another one. Edge is definitely going to be a big play. I had Malachi Starks also going to them in an earlier draft that I had, but obviously he goes a little bit earlier in this side. I'm going to go ahead and give them some pass rush. And again, just somebody that I think has more ability. James Pierce, Mike Green has going Kelvin Grant, Mykel Williams. I do like Mykel Williams as well. Green has been definitely off of his Senior Bowl. I'm just trying to read these notes, guys. Still always trying to learn much more and more about these players. Again, I'm not a big-time expert on a lot of this, and I definitely try to do as much as I can to learn as much as I can about these guys. Who has a Mike Green analysis? Here we go. This one has Mike Green going to Cincinnati. Mike Green doesn't usually bend the least limited amount of space. So definitely more of a finesse move guy that I'm seeing. He's kind of guy that kind of gambles a little bit. But I think the value is definitely there, especially with how much hype that he's had around after the combine, after his Senior Bowl day. Mike Green definitely there. Could be a solid pass rush for that. The Seattle Seahawks. This is another solid flex pick. Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp. They added all those guys in. They still have JSN. Noah Fant at tight end. What do some of these experts have going? Tyler Booker has kind of been my default pick for them as well, just because the interior is so big. And I think that this is the one team that could utilize a potential reach at that position at guard. Because, yeah, it's bad. It's bad, especially at that center position. So I'm going to go back to it. With that interior with Tyler Booker at number 18. Number 19, again, another team that could use a big-time pass rusher. And I think I'm going to go ahead and give them Mykel Williams out of, where is my boy Mykel Williams? Mykel Williams out of Georgia on that edge for Tampa. Definitely was a big-time need for them. That offense was able to do great things, but the defense just could not get around to it. Definitely Mykel, somebody that could bolster that pass rush for them, and I think will be a solid pick there. My Denver Broncos, last time I had them going Luther Burden III. I'm going to switch it up because we're switching up this draft a little bit. I'm going to have them going to Marion Hampton with the 20th overall pick. Again, another guy that's been a big-time riser. Somebody that I don't know, can you get him in the second round? Can you not? If he gets past Denver, is there another team that could potentially want him? I think that there are suitors for him, but I'm not sure if they're really going to go out and want to grab him. I think that Luther Burden is definitely the bigger need because number 2 wide receiver next to Courtland Sutton, you get somebody who's kind of the opposite of Courtland Sutton with Luther Burden, who's just more of that speed receiver on the outside, running streak routes opposite from Courtland Sutton. Definitely think that could be big time. But I also think that wide receiver has also gotten deeper of a class over the past couple of weeks after the combine. They added Matthew Golden. I think that Alec Iamore and Jake Beck have both been 2 guys that have kind of rised. The Broncos have continually mentioned targeting Bo Nix's connection with Tez Johnson at Oregon and looking to grab him as well. So I think that that's somebody they could get in the 4th or 5th round, kind of be that Troy Franklin type guy that they got last year. The Broncos need running back. Sean Payton needs to start to really prioritize this running game and making this offense less one-dimensional. Hampton, really, really solid speed, a great pass catcher out of the backfield, is another guy that has solid balance, being able to break tackles. I mean, the dude's a beast, and I've loved all of his tape. He's reminded me a lot of how Javonte Williams was coming out of North Carolina, but with even better pass-catching abilities than Javonte. Really like this pick for Denver. Really hope that they end up with him, which is where we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. And in this draft, I'm going to be giving them Jalen Milroe. This is going to be the 3rd quarterback that ends up going off the board in this draft. And I think that this is actually a real possibility. The Steelers have been commenting that they have been liking Milroe a little bit more than some of the other 3rd quarterback options, aka Jackson Dart. And the reason for that is just because of his high ceiling. I think that Mike Tomlin is really looking at this team and going, okay, we have been solid for about 4, 5, 6 years. We've been going 9-8, 10-7. We've been losing in the first round. And we've had these stereotypical quarterbacks that really can't grow, have really reached their ceiling. And if we could get a talented guy like Milroe, somebody who throws the deep ball very well, has a lot of electric speed. He just needs to work on that decision-making. He needs to work on that accuracy a little bit more. But a guy that a lot of people could say is almost as talented as Lamar Jackson was coming out of college in Louisville, especially from an athleticism standpoint, kind of the same thing. If this could work out for the Steelers, this could be a big-time boom. And I think that at this point, that is what Mike Tomlin and his team are looking for, just somebody that could give them a pop. I think that's why they traded for Justin Fields last year, why they ended up going out and getting Justin Fields. They wanted to get somebody that was a dual threat that could play in the running game but could also pass. It didn't really work out very well, so now they're going to go out and try and get him again. I think that Milroe, especially if Pittsburgh goes out and gets Aaron Rodgers, sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for a year could definitely help him. And then plugging into the second year, it's going to be a little bit rough of a big-time development curve. But if it could work out, like I said, Milroe has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He also has the potential to be one of the worst ever. But that stands to the development team. And Mike Tomlin, being a veteran guy, being a very, very mature head coach, being able to work with almost every personality in the NFL, I believe, I think that this is a solid option for them if they are going to grab that 3rd quarterback. Dart, McCord, those guys are definitely also in play, but I think that those are guys that are just more of the stereotypical type where they're not going to grow any more than they are. Milroe has that ability. They're going to go with Jalen Milroe in this draft. Number 22, pretty easy here. Luther Burden III to the LA Chargers. Receiver for Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman in this draft. Also do think that Colston Loveland could be in play. And I think that could be more of a likely pick just because behind Loveland, you don't have a lot of tight end depth in this draft. Like I talked about, there's some solid wide receiver depth here. But getting somebody with the speed ability with Burden, like I mentioned, across from Ladd McConkey, who honestly, with his intelligence of being able to get behind the defense consistently, has kind of reminded me a little bit of a Julian Edelman. It's a nice change of pace for that offense. You get Justin Fields, 2 bona fide receiver options, work them in there. Burden is definitely going to be electric in Los Angeles. You move to another team that could potentially go wide receiver. You could also move to another team that could potentially need corner in the Green Bay Packers. Take a look at what we got here. Derek Harmon on the defensive line. Interesting. So look at these other drafts. Walter Nolan. So definitely going pass rush a little bit here for Jaden Higgins. Interesting. Very, very deep reach for Jaden Higgins there in the first round, especially. If we take a look at this Green Bay roster, always want to look at the roster just to see some of these holes. I mean, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, I don't think that they've had the pop, but I think that they've been suitable wide receivers. Tight end is also potentially could be a need. Tucker Kraft, 700 yards, it's solid, but again, would you like somebody better in that spot? I do know that this Green Bay team does like to go defense a lot, but I mean, you have Quay Walker. I understand that the sacks weren't there, but the tackles were there. Kenny Clark on the inside. You still have Rashawn Gary. Edgerrin Cooper in the middle potentially, but you just didn't get to the quarterback a lot this year, really. You could also look for a corner across, but I don't think that that's really available right now. How's the offensive line looking? Zach Tom, 4th round pick. Dang. They do have a big hole at tackle. Interesting, guys. Interesting. I'm going to go with James Pierce. I think that that's a solid pick. I think that's where he could land. That's his average draft position within this draft. I think that this is more of a pick that defines to Green Bay's culture more than their needs. They like the pass rushers. They like to go defensive a lot. They like to bolster up those trenches. And I think that James Pierce could definitely fit in there. He was with a monster defensive line in Tennessee that had, 4 or 5 guys, subbing in and out, which could also mean that he's definitely fresh and a lot more healthier than a lot of these other guys. Minnesota Vikings at 24. This is kind of a pick that I've kind of gone to a lot lately. Where the heck is he at? And that's Nick Manawari, somebody that has been compared a lot to Jeremy Chin, somebody who is just, once again, a box safety, somebody that can translate both to the safety position and the linebacker. We understand that Harrison Smith was signed to an extension, but of course, his days are definitely numbered. This secondary definitely needs some help and with some athletic ability there, with the secure tackling ability that he has. Coverage abilities are solid, not great, but solid. Nick Manawari right there. Versatility is big, especially late in this draft where you don't have, a lot to really go off of. I think that could be a big-time pick there. Houston Texans, they traded Laramie Tunsil, so I'm going to give them Josh Simmons in this draft. I understand the wide receiver could also be a big-time need for them, but you need to work on protecting C.J. Stroud. You also need to make sure that Joe Mixon has an offensive line to run behind. And so in this position, you get Trent Brown and Josh Simmons on the opposite side. And because the interior is so weak with signing guys like Laken Tomlinson, I really think that you need to prioritize the outside run game as much as you can. Dalton Schultz is fine. They traded for Christian Kirk, Nico Collins. Tank Dell, we'll see how he comes back. I hope that he comes back well. And then I think that you also just have some solid talent on this defense where you don't really need to go out and reach for a pass rusher. You have Hunter. You have Will Anderson. Shelvin Rankins, older veteran on the interior there. Aziz Al-Shair on the outside, who is solid. Derek Stingley, all-pro cornerback type guy right there. Josh Simmons need to protect your franchise quarterback. The LA Rams here, somebody that has been looked at as needing a tight end, Pro Football Focus says, and I do not blame them because Tyler Higbee is there. Obviously, they're looking to potentially go more in to the offensive side with signing Davante Adams as well, but I do think this defense definitely needs a look as well. And there still are a lot of really solid pass rushers. But with the state of it, do we really think that it's going to improve a lot with getting just one edge? I don't believe so. It could definitely get better. So I'm just going to bolster this offense a little bit and give Matthew Stafford another weapon. Matthew Stafford, Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Davante Adams, Colston Loveland. Sounds like a pretty sick offense to me there for LA. And Loveland, kind of the opposite of Tyler Warren a little bit. Somebody who's definitely more of a secure catcher, somebody who is more of your prototypical tight end that is going to be able to grab passes within that 5 to 10 yard range. Isn't going to make you big time plays, but is just a secure type catcher. Somebody that also could potentially block very well, like his ability out of Michigan. Then we go here into Baltimore and Detroit, two teams that I've also looked at for pass rush. It's going to be the word of the day, pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. And we're going to go back to back here, I believe. Just taking a look at what some of these guys here, James Pierce, Jamar Stewart. I mean, a lot of these guys have very similar abilities. You can kind of go anywhere with it. With Baltimore, definitely needs to be an edge. I think that is definitely the bigger need, other than more than interior. If we take a look at where they are, I'm getting mixed around here, but definitely do think that the interior is definitely less of a need. Definitely think they need to go edge, especially playing Kyle Van Noy on that weak side. Roquan Smith you have on the interior, but could get somebody opposite from him. So we're going to go edge here. Edge linebacker. I mean, take your pick, really. Shamar Stewart, Donovan Ezruku, kind of go back and forth with them. I'm going to give Shamar Stewart some love. Haven't picked him in a draft over the past couple of times that I've done this. Detroit, very similar position that they're in. Definitely could look to go more onto the interior as well. Or are you kind of worried about the state of Aiden Hutchinson coming off of a broken leg and you want to help him at outside end? You have DJ Reader in the middle, Derek Barnes, sub linebacker. Can also fill in the trenches on the inside. Kenneth Grant is sitting right there. I'm going to go ahead and substitute him in right there. Washington Commanders here at 29. Ooh. Emeka Egbuka at 29 is definitely an interesting pick. Donovan Ezruku. James Pierce. Tedero McMillan. I mean, wide receiver definitely could be a need, especially if Debo is not producing the way that he normally does, especially if he gets injured again. Tight end suitable. Running back, you're fine. Offensive line, I just don't think that's a need anymore with Tunsil there, although you could improve that. They got Kinlaw in the middle to go along with Deron Payne, which I like. Luvu, Wagner. Secondary could be improved a little bit, but still got Jonathan Jones, which I know that they patched up, and that allows Sancho to move to the slot corner, which I think is where he's better suited. Egbuka's there, but I think that there's been a lot of draft fatigue around him, and I think that with having Debo and Terry on the outside, you want someone with more stereotypical blinding speed, and with that speed that Matthew Golden showed off in the at the NFL Combine, I definitely think that is going to heighten his draft stock a little bit. So we're going to go Golden with 29th. Again, kind of switching it up a little bit for this draft a little bit, maybe not picking your stereotypical players, but taking a look at that. Buffalo Bills at 30. Definitely could use some help within the secondary. Definitely could also use some help when it comes to the pass rush. A lot of people have them going Matthew Hairston. This one has them going Derek Harmon. What does Trespasso have? He has them trading it away. How's your guys' day going? Let me know in the comments how your guys' day going, how your weekend is going. Go ahead and let me know. I mean, pass rush isn't as big of a need anymore with adding Joey Bosa. The linebacking core could definitely improve a little bit. Wide receiver definitely could be a pick because Coleman's there. Am I tripping? What happened to Amari Cooper? Did I miss something, guys? Because they just never re-signed him. That's interesting. I knew that he was a free agent this year, but it was kind of weird that they just didn't immediately re-sign him. What was his 297, 250? Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I was super curious about what really happened to him. I mean, Hairston is solid at corner. He's probably the only guy out of the first two that could probably go. But receiver is such a big need for them. Like, do you want Josh Allen just running for his life again this year? I don't think so. And I think having a combination of Egbuka and Keon Coleman on the outside could definitely be a solid team that throws downfield. Kansas City Chiefs need offensive line. I mean, especially with giving away Joe Thuney, it's not even a question for me. Gray Zabel's there. Interior, not a lot. Who does Charles Davis have them going? Josh Simmons. I mean, I think that you kind of just have to reach at this point for a tackle, but I think that it's what they need. And I mean, when you're at 31, it's not that big of a deal. You still do have some talented players. which, by the way, there are going to be talented players left on the board. I've seen some people, especially on TikTok, go, how the heck do you have Ezruka? Do you have Derek Harmon and these guys falling? I mean, that's just going to happen because there's so much solid first-round talent, especially in this depth, in this draft, especially with the depth at edge. And in this situation, when you have 3 quarterbacks going, I mean, that takes up a pick. The 2 quarterbacks at the beginning take up the pick. If you have 2 running backs going within the first round, that takes up those draft picks. So you're going to have these solid edge rushers falling to the second round at times. 2 wide receivers back to back. I mean, I think that's definitely possible with the needs that these 2 teams have as well. So with the Chiefs, I think that you just go best offensive lineman available, Gray Zabel. Josh Simmons, a lot of people have him falling here. You obviously also have, who was the other tackle that I was flirting with a little bit? Kelvin Banks, but I think that he could potentially go higher. So Zabel, I took Simmons at 25, so definitely a world where Zabel falls to 31 and helps them bolster that offensive line to protect Mahomes. And then finally, you have the Philadelphia Eagles. Once again, just going to look at who these guys have. Nick Scorton. Josh Connerly, interesting. Wanting to bolster the Gray Zabel, interesting. Still wanting to bolster the offensive line. Wow, Trapasso has Burden falling all the way to 32. That's kind of wild. But secondary is obviously not a need. Let's take a look at this depth chart a little bit. Tried to make this last pick count for my brotherly love brothers out there. Hurts, Barkley, obviously receivers not. I mean, I think the only reason why tackle is a potential need is because Lane Johnson is 34 years old. And 32 is definitely a pick where you could pick a backup tackle just for a year. They signed back Zach Bond. I mean, this team is just so stacked. It's really difficult to just pinpoint what exactly they need. I mean, how much more dominant could this pass rush really get? But you could potentially get an end. And I think that Ezra is just such great talent here that you go ahead and go with him. So that's the draft, guys. That is the draft that potentially has 3 quarterbacks within it. If we take a look at this, the 3 quarterbacks we have, Ward and Shedeur going 1 and 2. And then you obviously have Milroe going 21 to the Steelers. I also wouldn't leave out the Jets, the Giants. I wouldn't leave out the who else? That's kind of it for the early going. When it comes to quarterback, maybe the Rams, just because Stafford's aging, but that's kind of a hot. Vikings could definitely go there as well, but I think that they're really going to be locked in to see what J.J. McCarthy has going, at least for his first year. But a lot of other risers, Genty coming up at 6, I think is a riser. Walker at 8, big-time riser. Johnson at 10, he's been falling a lot. So I may have drafted guys maybe a little bit more high, but also some drops. You have Mason Green going at 9. Tedero McMillan falling all the way down to 12. Egbuka seems to be sliding farther and farther down the draft board, now coming at 30 behind Matthew Golden for me. Loveland falls a little bit, but I think that he will be picked in this 20 to 26 range. You have Denver, you have Los Angeles, and you have the Rams. All 3 could definitely use a tight end, so I think that could be a solid pick. What was a surprising one for me? Probably Mike Green at edge at 17. Also, potentially Jahdae Barron. I think that's kind of the only one that I would really take back because I feel like it's more talent, but Jahdae doesn't really have the size to really compete there. But at the end of the day, guys, that is my mock draft for you guys. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Who do you think is going to go to what? Do you think we could potentially have a situation where we have 3 first-round quarterbacks in this draft? Who do you think that 3rd quarterback is going to be, and which team do you think is going to be drafting them? If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below, and share with your friends. And if you haven't already, come on, man, what are you doing? Go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of the ads are going to be down below. And, of course, like always, there's going to be a bar popping up right here. And without further ado, guys, that is all from me today. I will see you guys on